basically, and this is just something that I was just writing in the book, trying to describe different forms of touch. So most times when we touch something, it's like an object. It's more of a touch for intent. So like my intent is, let's say, not to crease this paper, not to soil it, to, how can I, manipulate this without doing any kind of damage. Or I can have the intent to damage by grabbing it and leaving, permanent creases. But when you're touching someone, this is the hardest thing not to do, is not touch with intent. Because my intent is never to fix something. My intent is never to say, I'm going to do this for you. Now, don't get me wrong. If you've got a frozen shoulder or a wrist or something, that's like a no-brainer for me. I mean, I can get rid of carpal tunnel in 10 minutes. Like, it's not a brag. It's just whatever. Now, with special needs child, you have to think, again, I'm working on that child. I don't have a specific formula, let's say, for cerebral palsy or for autism, and because what I'm doing, and this is what I want to show the difference, the next form of touch is a responsive touch. Now, most people think of responsive touch is to evoke an emotion. So if I touch you in a way, you'll either find pleasure in it or pain. It really doesn't go you're not going to go, if I smack you, you're not going to be happy, but I'm going to get a responsive emotion. But if I caress you in a way, and say, hey, let's go do something, then you're getting that emotional. Of all the toys in this office, boy, those flowers are just number one, huh?
Every time.
So if you actually just touch, you're gonna have a repel from it. But if you touch how I touch with, again, I'm looking for response. So by doing that, I do a rotation. So when I go in with a rotation, I immediately can interact with that system as soon as I put my hands in. But again, if I were to just put my hands in, do you know what I mean? The system's going to go away from me. So it just goes back to, I was trying to think is the closest I could get to atoms or whatever. But if I'm in here, again, I'm already interacting, I'm mixing. I was going to do food dye, but then I thought I'd have blue hands for like a week. Right. To show that, but because someone was asking me, same thing, if this was a bucket of sand, and this is where I just didn't have a bunch of props ready to go, if I just stuck my fingers in, I am not going to get anywhere, because it's going to act like a wall, even though it's sand and it's granular, and it's actually a form of Hawaiian martial arts to strengthen that hand, to do damage with. So if I do a karate chop, you're actually supposed to stick your fingers, like that in the sand. But if I went like this with sand, I could easily get to the bottom of the bucket, working with. So it's the same with a human being. So when I'm working with them, again, notice I don't have a force through my hands. I'm just sort of being, not to be new agey, but being one with the ball. So I'm not causing where I'm like trying to do something like that. And that's where Frank's going to come in so I can show you that. When I decide to work with somebody, and, obviously I can look at, this is plastic or whatever, but still to touch, I'm looking for a response. So, and this is why I wanted a skeletal system that moved, because basic law of physics, for every action there's a reaction. I can't touch him, even just, very minutely, and how much response I get from him. And if I want a certain response, I have to honor my way of touching into the system. So if I'm touching him this gently, and again, it's just a skeletal system, and I'm getting this kind of reaction, I don't have a right to touch anyone in such a way where I'm preventing their response. So when I touch in a way, I'm not, like I said, going to grab this in a certain way where I'm preventing a natural response. And by natural response means that I'm not looking necessarily for a typical response. I want to see how this system responds to me. So when I approach a system too harshly, and that I can mean harshly, but just a light grab, then they can't react to my touch. And if they can't react to my touch, how do I know what I can do for them? So when I can touch in such a way, just like this, I mean, look at what I'm getting out of this guy, and it's really just a piece of plastic. But since he's formed in such a way, and this is where I really wanted to be able to show, what a body's doing underneath, especially too, I've been talking about a lot, how much that heel needs to counterbalance, which we'll cover at a later date. Whereas if you look at a human foot, because of the ligaments that are presenting with the skin, you don't see how much that heel needs to counterbalance with that whole foot. And this gets into, complications, AFOs, and all of that kind of stuff, where you're not allowing that function, which is so important, and also is reciprocal through the pelvis and even the chest. Like, you can't see it on the video, but even now, just pulling and doing that heel, how much his chest cavity responds to all of that. So that's a whole another thing that we're going to get into. But what I also wanted to show, I got packed in this stuff. So let's just say he's wrapped in paper, or I'm touching paper. Just to show not only the gentleness, but the purpose of touch that I have. So again, if I come underneath here, you're hardly hearing that the paper is reacting to my touch. So I can really work with him in such a way where I'm hardly getting an auditory response. But if I were to grab him, you can hear immediately how much force my hands are having on his system. And you're hearing it, again, just through your sense of hearing, but that's that whole system that that person's responding to that can be just so overloading to a child. So when you have a therapist, and I'm picking on therapists, sorry, that suddenly says, come over here, we're going to be working on all fours, that system now has to recover just from that, and I call it an attack, even though it's not an attack maybe to you or I, it's still an attack to a system where they want to put up their protection. So when that protection goes on, then the learning decreases substantially or to almost nothing. I just want to show you the same thing I just did with Frank. So if I basically just go like here, again, I wouldn't work with someone standing up. Immediately go to sit down. When I want to see how her foot's going to respond, now obviously the leg is heavier than it was Frank. Her leg is going to present differently than any other person that I've touched before. Just the way the knee mathematically is off to the side, let's say, versus straight on, how the foot presents off to the side versus straight on, or her foot's not contracted or is contracted. There's going to be so many mathematical variables that's going to affect movement through her system, and that's the whole reason why, you just touch in a way. However, I have a movement vocabulary that I know what she and other people are capable of, and it's to see people's possibilities and capabilities versus seeing limitations and restrictions. Why would I work on anybody thinking, what am I going to do for this person? Save your money, go away, In any case, I wouldn't go to a lawyer, a teacher. If a teacher walks in and goes, I just don't know how I can teach this child, bye-bye. We all have different, I say it all the time, you wouldn't marry my husband, I wouldn't marry yours. I'm very happy when some children go home, you know what I mean? And people say the same about my children, or they question each other's parenting skills, all of this, it goes on and on and on, that's just human nature. However, to touch someone in a way to show interest, why is their foot like this? How can I help them? Is just the purest form of, to me, like baking someone a cookie. You just do it because it's just the right thing to do and it's nice, and when you share a cookie or you share a pancake or whatever, you get an instant smile from someone. when you just do that simple act of, I just thought of you today, period, the end. It doesn't have to be. So when I grab, I shouldn't say grab, when I present myself to a foot, and again, there's a big difference now because the way her system is, if I just do this, see already that little startle she had because I didn't offer any kind of support to the vestibular on this side. Now she's healthy, she's had 4 kids, she can run around like nobody I know, but just the difference between doing this and this evokes a startle. Just that little bit of a difference. So why wouldn't I go right in and make sure she's protected? So if I'm getting this from a healthy nervous system, can you imagine just placing a child in CP into a chair that they're not familiar with? Come on, we're going for a ride. What does that mean to their system? So if they're already like, there's a difference between thinking, oh, a car seat to you and I should be so safe, but to some central nervous systems, you might as well say we're going on a roller coaster ride. You know what I mean? And they get very protective. They start to panic, scream. It's not to say, oh gosh, what am I going to do about this? It's start saying, what can I do about this? Or what can I do to change it? So same thing, again now, Claudia's been just letting me hang out with her, but if I suddenly do this, again, or if I go like that, again, she's not contracting her toes, she's not going into a full-blown startle, but I'm not going to get a response from her if I'm just saying, in a sense, hi, how are you? And with this, I can get to work immediately and start working with her, and we're going to go into that now probably. It looks like I'm working with her foot, but everything I'm doing right now is totally reflected into her pelvis. I'm actually working through her system into her pelvis. But notice everything I'm doing is just like going into the water with rotation. Every touch, every intent I have has some form of rotation. If I just touch her, I'm getting very limited movement response from just a direct touch versus the same application of force and going into some kind of rotation. Then I have the whole system, her chest, her pelvis, versus just touching. And really, if you just keep with these principles, you've got 98% of the work down. When you're just going back and and you'll see this when people start learning, you get the kind of the claw going around, and I'll see people doing this kind of thing, and I'm like, okay, we're not climbing a rock wall here, we're just holding up a foot, we're just.
Are you putting any pressure through the fingertips?
I'm putting some pressure, but honestly, it's to the force of this. I'm not going through her system. What it is now I've already evoked movement patterns, so she's allowing me to move her system. See, if I just grab suddenly the other leg, right? And even just went right into it, see the difference in the pelvis trying to do that versus here. See how the hip is already presenting off to the side? I can actually torque her femur a little bit, whereas here, see how I can't torque the femur? It's all going through the knee. All the tension's going through the knee. I can't rotate the femur. Most people don't know how to touch. Most touch is illegal. we can't hug a child in school. We can't, in some places I'm hearing you can't even high five. You can't. But again, most people think of touch is that it's going to create an emotional thing. I'm not sitting here going, hi, sweetheart. You know what I mean? That's for her kids to do with her or that kind of thing. So I'm not going after an emotional attachment. Now, she might like me. She might like to come here because I make her feel better or move better. But I'm not creating an environment where she likes me, Although I didn't ask her lately. That could be true. But Do you like me, Claudia? Yes, I do. So, again, I'm going after a responsive touch, but response to how her system reacts to me, not looking for an emotional response. Does that make sense? Here's a different example where she really wants to present her feet to the floor. So if I use the same form of even propping, I'm going to get a different response because she's already into a stand. So it's just easy to do. There's different ways of propping the system. With children, I prop them usually with me. But with adults, I use something. So again, it allows the pelvis to unlock, or it just allows their system to not have to hold itself in a position. What? You have mommies on the table for a change.
I know, she's thinking like, haha.
So it's the same thing in this position. Now I can hardly touch her, let's say, because her feet are right at the end of the bolster. That's no difference. Again, I'm not going to stand up. I'll even show, so standing up for me to do a foot, which is fine. I mean, I have a very good touch. But just that same touch now with me sitting down and I'm not using my system as much, and again, I'm on my knees, but the difference just there of the touch. Can you feel the difference? So now if I tighten my abs, feel the difference? I can hardly get up to your knee. Versus my belly out and now the whole leg. I mean, it's just instant. Because this is where I believe, and I've been taught, at least this part, it's a circuit, you know, just like any kind of energy is, electricity is, that kind of thing. Again, it's not new agey, but if I break this circuit, even if I grasp my hand, you know, to the one side, again, I barely can get information from her, maybe to mid-calf. And if I release my hand, you know, I'm back into the pelvis just instantly, just with the way I'm functioning. I was working with a near drowning and it was hysterical. This nurse was with him, didn't ask questions the whole week. Right at the end of the week, she's standing there and she's lifting this kid's head. And I swear to God, even though he's max assist, all of this, he looks at her like, what the heck are you doing? And I said the same thing. I was like, excuse me. She goes, oh, I'm just copying all the work you've been doing with him so I can do this with him at home. I'm like, when have you ever saw me standing up working on him? You can't just take a head and just go. You know, then that's what she was doing. Versus sitting down and just doing this. So now again, if I were to grab you, just feel the difference. You know, so again, if I say, come on, you know, like, I want your leg over here. Your brain is already going, oh, okay, I'm not lying down right, which is a basic function. So if I'm already telling your brain you're not even lying down right, that brain's already at a less advantageous place to learn because it's like, gosh, I can't even lie down right. You know, so I never correct people, very rarely. And it's actually one of the things parents start to say, well, aren't you going to start fixing the hand? Aren't you going to start fixing the feet? I might eventually, but we still need to learn. She's into the flowers. The basics of just how a part functions before we can start making improvements or, quote, correcting it. So here I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm just going to show with one hand going into the heel. Now I can use one hand a lot better in this position because she's already on the bolster. I'm not lifting her. If I were to lift like this, see how there's weakness? Do you feel that? Versus if I can now lift off the bolster where I would walk two hands just to secure the system. And here I can start doing that. But right now I would go for let the bolsters do the work. But here, see? I can't put her foot at a 90-degree angle. Just from this. So when she goes to stand up, this is pulling on her glutes. I can do it, but you can see the tension she probably has in her lower back. And see also the startle you had putting the foot back down then from the 90-degree. So coming in again, I'm securing her foot. I'm gonna go up into her lower arch, into the ball of the foot. You can correct me anatomically if you'd like.
Oh, that's right.
And I meant if you wanted to add it specifically what bones I'm touching, but she's a anthropologist, so she teaches anatomy. I like her enough that I'm not insecure, but at first I was like, oh, she's gonna think I'm an idiot.
Oh. No tissue. No tissue.
So see how I'm working with the whole heel at the same time with the arch. I'm not here. This is massage. This is a system. I've got the pelvis, I'm into the hips, I'm into the arch. There we go. Now the knee's starting to release a lot of the tension there was there. So just that little bit, the difference. Even here. So now still I can't bring her past the 90 degrees. Again, I can, but it's a force. See how the tension you have through the top, through the femur?
Yeah.
Now again, I could yell at her and say, you should be able to present your foot at 90 degrees. Of course she could. She can walk out the door. I know she can walk. But for whatever reason, it pulls on her system. Or it's not the most efficient way to go. So that's where I have to jump in and go, well, there we go. So just from that little bit, now start to feel the difference. See how and now I can start going into more of a walk and gait pattern if I want to this way. So I worked on you, 4 or 5 minutes?
Right.
If I just take this foot and expect the same response, see how you've totally lost your balance. You're not standing on this foot whatsoever.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I have you.
Right. Okay.
This is like the Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off.
Right.
See how she doesn't know where I end and she begins. But here, it's like I have no contact with the system because I haven't presented in the way that she's allowed me into her world. So now see here, what I can do with her pelvis? Just from that little bit. Now this looks like I'm shaking. What I'm doing is I'm going into the ankle and letting her fall. And this is something that Gideon and Aaron don't have a good reference to. That quote, okay, I'm engaged, I'm not engaged. That's just instant. It's sort of like a light switch. Lights on, lights off. It should be that instant. Now I haven't worked on this side, so here, see, I can't even turn her on, much less get the fall. That system at the moment is not advantageous. It doesn't know what I want from it. So I couldn't quote shake her if I wanted to. Whereas here, again, this is what I'm looking for. And this is a much healthier nervous system, tonus, everything like that, just a response. Just from that little bit. So that's where some people are like, but why aren't you working on my shoulder that's hurt? Well, if those feet are jacked up, that shoulder's just going to have to do so much more to balance the system because the feet aren't able to respond to the planet, or all your walking in cobblestones the way you want to. So your footing starts getting unsure and then it just jacks up through the shoulders to the neck, is one possibility. I'm not saying just because the feet are messed up, your shoulders are, but I can guarantee you there's some kind of reference to the system. Jenna being the most obvious because her hand was taped to the chest, and so she couldn't develop that as an infant. So that's what she's been working on. So, does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So just from that little bit, you can get up and walk around and see if you just notice a difference, sort of like what Claudia did when she got up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh, Giddy? You see that? Yeah. You can feel it all the way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also too, if you were just to stand on one foot versus the other foot, So see again what I was talking about, how the top has to balance more on the other foot, and that's where you start getting constraints in the shoulders and contractions that you don't need to, just to counteract, because that conversation just goes higher. So that's why starting off on the table, where that gravity and balance, I don't have to work with it at such a sophisticated level. I can just, let it go. So now because of what she's gone through, I mean, I knew it from the beginning that I would get still little or no response, because she burnt her hand when she was like 6 months old.
So that it would heal. When I was like at the push to stand up stage.
Oh, wow.
Crawling, I crawled and put my hand on a broiler pan.
Oh.
And so they taped it open into my chest. So I crawled with a hand and an elbow.
Wow.
Which was really effective.
So she'd broken this toe when she'd given birth. She'd fallen with Arlie, and she goes, I just can't get my foot back. So I started out with this foot, and then I went to this foot, and I was like, what
It's
the
not your
heck
feet.
did you do? So, and then she goes, oh, my hand was taped to my chest, and I'm going, well, so much for her torque through the thorax.
Right.
Did I just kick it under the table? Uh-oh! Oh my gosh, that was gorgeous. Uh-oh!
She has like 12 words.
I know, but just the way the tone in that.
Yeah.
Uh-oh!
Uh-oh is one of the favorites. She'll hold something out and look at you that she's not supposed to drop on the floor and say uh-oh before she does it.
That's not how that works.
We're like, that is not uh-oh. That and careful. When she's at the edge of something that she knows I don't want her to be at, she'll go, careful!
Uh-oh.
Like, you know what? You get told all that.
So in her case, see how she can't present to the side of her leg. I can't move whatever I do, the ankle over to here. This is a huge strain on her system.
Oh.
Sorry.
Now I can feel it in my...
Yeah? Shh.
You don't need to yell about it.
Oh my God, and I just did Donald Duck to Max.
Yeah.
And he looked at me like he just stopped dead. He was like, what the heck was that? It's funny. So I don't know what she did with him. I was like, you have to take a picture of that. Because he was just...
Patty cake.
So with this, I'm just going to keep bringing her in.
Bake me a cake. Mix it. Roll it. Toss it up high. Toss it up high. There you go. Good job. For Daddy and Mommy and Artie and Daddy. I don't know what it is about patty cake, but it fixes all of our problems. I'm gonna do it again.
Shh.
I feel like patty cake, bake me. Bake me the cake as fast as you can. Mix it.
Mix
Roll
it.
it.
Mix it up. You roll it up.
Toss it up high. For Daddy and Mommy and you bake the cake.
Now with this, she's going on in a social situation. I'm not telling her to stop. I'm not asking her to be zen. Because no offense, this is like driving a car. She should be able to have a conversation and not worry about the contractions on her foot.
Right. And I'm not trying to help you if I'm not paying attention.
I don't know about that. So already the difference, you can see how her foot can present to the side. But this is balance. This is kicking a soccer ball. This is, when a foot can only do this, not only that, but if this conversation were to continue, you can see where she risks, where she's going to someday, where her muscles do not supersede her mass as she ages. Because that's the only problem when we have habitual patternings. Up until now, I'm just 50. I have muscles that will supersede my bad habits. When my muscles start to weaken, you see it most obviously after a surgery. But when my muscles change and I cannot control or supersede my mass, that's where those habits start to get you. And where if this doesn't change, she'll roll this ankle as she ages. And she either risks the broken ankle, the broken hip, or those things that go on when you're a senior, or that kind of thing. So. So with that, we'll go after the kids.
Yeah.